Hi, my name is Herman Kunscher from Carlsquare Equity Research. Today we will listen to a presentation of Biosurgeon by the CEO Tine. Tine, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much. So thank you for inviting us. And Biosurgeon is actually a Nordic company. The actual invention is Norwegian. We have a board where the majority is Swedish, and we are listed at First North in Sweden. I'm the CEO and I am Danish, and that's also why I'll do the presentation in English. So first of all, what Biosurgeon is doing is we are combating life-threatening fungal infections, also called invasive fungal infections. And approximately 6.6 million people are affected by a life-threatening fungal disease every year. 2.6 people die of a fungal disease every year. Biosurgeon is developing a groundbreaking antifungal, and the lead product is called BST-005. And it offers broad spectrum coverage, and we think it's better than the current treatment that are on the market. There are two types of antifungal. There's fungistatic antifungals, which inhibits growth of the fungal. When you inhibit growth of a fungus, then there's a risk of mutation and thereby resistant formation, which leads to an ineffective treatment. The other antifungals, they are fungicidal. Fungicidal means you kill the bug, you kill the fungus. They do not create resistance, but they are limited in use due to their toxicity. They have severe side effects like kidney damage, liver damage, and these damages can be permanent. So therefore, fungicidal drugs are in general restricted in dose and duration. BST-005 is fungicidal and it's safe. We have shown that in healthy volunteers. 38 healthy volunteers in our phase 1, and there were no significant side effects in our phase 1 study. We have currently an ongoing proof of concept study in patients in India, and we have successfully treated the first patient. We have in India a commercial partner called Alkem Laboratories, and it's one of India's top 5 pharmaceutical companies. They will fund our phase 2 and 3 clinical trials in India. By BST-005, our aim is to position it as first-line therapy for invasive fungal infection based on the drug's fungicidal activity, broad spectrum, low risk of resistant formation, and the safety profile. So I want to put the numbers a little bit into perspective. So the cancer that has highest mortality globally is actually lung cancer. 1.7 million patients die of lung cancer each year. Here in fungal infection, we're talking about 2.5 million people that are dying each year of a fungal infection. 30% more than the lung cancer. That's one part. The other part is the resistance formation, and it's a major issue in globally that you form resistance towards treatment, and you use pesticides in agriculture, you use antifungals in agriculture, and that creates a lot of fungal resistant strains. These two factors have actually led to that the Center of Disease Control in Europe and WHO have raised the red flag and has decided that it's a global health threat overall. This here is a case story about 2 children in Denmark. So in January 2024, it was disclosed that 2 children with leukemia at Rigshospitalet, which is Denmark's #1 hospital, had contracted severe fungal infection, most likely airborne mold from the hospital. One child died and the other one has today reduced breathing capacity. So the thing is that fungal infections are global, and especially vulnerable patients, fragile patients such as cancer patients, transplant patients, HIV patients have a risk of fungal infections, but also diabetes patients and COPD patients. So here is a slide on the market size. So in total, it's estimated that the total market for antifungal is $16 billion. That's everything that's in the antifungal space. If you talk about acute care, which is BST-005, then it's just under $1 billion in each year in sales. We think, and it grows for 6.6% per year, we think that when you talk about BST-005, then we can definitely be a part of that market, and we can make it bigger due to the actual profile of BST-005. So digging into the details on BST-005 and why we think it has a better or more potential than the current antifungal for acute care. It's genetically improved polyene macrolide. Polyene macrolides are known classes of drugs, and BST-005 was designed to be more specific in binding to the fungi than existing polyenes. It will target the fungal wall, and it will not bind to lookalike components in human tissue. And thereby it's more safe, and we have shown in our phase 1 we have no kidney toxicity, no clinically relevant impact on liver and other blood parameters. It's free of cardiovascular, central nervous and respiratory adverse events. It's fungicidal and it kills the fungus. Here is a slide also on some of the early studies we did. And you can see at the top that's Candida, Aspergillus, Fusarium, Mucor, Cryptococcus. Those are the major fungal strains that can cause invasive fungal infection. And you could see BST-005 is a broad-spectred antifungal. Just below is amphotericin B. That's our main competitor. But as said early in the beginning, the side effects with amphotericin B is quite severe. So therefore, both the dose and the duration is limited. So no physician is interested in prescribing amphotericin B unless it's very, very necessary. If you then move on, you have the fungistatic antifungals, those who might create resistance. And you can already see here on this diagram that there are red areas. There are fungal strains where you have formed resistance and where they are no longer effective. Let's talk a little bit about our partner Alkem. So when we decided we wanted to go to India with our proof of concept study, we needed a partner in India because it's good to have presence in the place where you do the clinical trial. And there's a high incidence and awareness of invasive fungal infections in India. So it would be ideal for us to have an Indian partner. Alkem in itself is the 5th largest pharmaceutical company that has both clinical development expertise, but it also has a commercial infrastructure. The actual collaboration agreement is that they will manage this proof of concept trial, they're part of it, and then when we come to phase 2 and 3, they will fund the clinical trial cost in India. And then at the end of these 2 trials, or the end of the trials that is leading to an approval of BST-005, Alchem's investment will be converted into Biosurgeon shares at a premium. The commercial right, they will of course get the exclusive commercial rights in India, and we will receive a royalty from the sales in India. Turning back to the proof of concept, which is super exciting for us. So the proof of concept study is a study in patients, and it aims to evaluate BST-005 as rescue treatment in patients. The study, if it is positive and in general, it will pave the way for an expanded access or a compassionate use program. The study design is, of course, patients with severe fungal infections, and the study is an open-label dose escalation study that includes three cohorts with 5 patients in each cohort, and in total 15 patients. It's conducted at 12 intensive care units in India, and the patient will be treated with an escalating dose. The recruitment is ongoing, and the first patient was dosed and treated in July, and we hope to highlight information from the study on an ongoing basis to the public. The last patient, last visit, and top-line data is estimated to be published by the end of January 2025. If we talk about the first patient, so the patient was a 47-year-old male. He had uncontrolled diabetes. He presented with fever, cough, and he was coughing up fresh blood. So he underwent a lung biopsy, and he was tested positive for mucormycosis. Mucormycosis is also called black fungus, and it's one of the most severe fungal infections you can get. The black fungus is actually eating up soft tissue, bones, everything from inside. So this patient here entered the study based on mucormycosis, and he also had moderate renal impairment. He was dosed with BST-005, and he increased the dose with 0.1 milligram per kilo every 3 days, and he ended up at day 28 at a dose of 1 milligram per kilogram. The standard treatment of these patients is that they normally get treated 2 weeks with medication, and then they undergo surgery where you removed the infected tissue to avoid further spreading and to remove the already dead tissue. When we came to day 14, the physician, the investigator, decided that he would rather continue with BST-005 and see how the patient, and at day 28 the patient actually recovered, and he avoided surgery, so both his lungs were preserved. He also, his renal parameters, which were clinically significant abnormal at the beginning, were normalized, and so were his electrolytes. There were no major safety issues during treatment, even at the high doses. This is one case, and you could say maybe it's one-off, and it might be, but I'm going to take you a little bit back to the earlier evidence we have of the clinical profile of BST-005. The first one is phase 1, where we have where we're testing BST-005 in a classical design phase 1 study, 38 healthy males and females. They will receive, or they received, a single dose or multiple doses. There were no serious adverse events, and there were no clinically relevant changes. So our conclusion from the study is that BST-005 was safe in healthy volunteers. The other part on the right side, that's an animal study, a preclinical study, where it's a classical model for kidney damage. And you have a biomarker called NAG, And the more nag you can measure, the worse is the kidney damage. This here is a comparative study between BST-005 and our main competitor, amphotericin B. And you can see the top curve is amphotericin B, and you can see with dose escalation, you get more and more kidney damage or release of NAG. For BST-005, you see an almost flat curve, meaning no kidney damage. Moving on into helicopter view, the patent coverage, we can say we have a very good patent portfolio, both with granted and ongoing applications, and we have coverage until 2043. Then we have also been granted orphan drug status by the FDA, which gives us a 5-year market exclusivity in the United States. This here is the coming years. 2024, we're in 2024, we do the proof of concept study, we report it. At the same time, we begin to negotiate with authorities about opening an IND, and that's for 2025. And we also produce further material for phase 2 and 3 studies. And 2026 will then be we'll focus on the phase 2 and 3 studies. At the bottom, when we have proof of concept data, we think we can go into serious discussions. This here is a table on recent deals in the area. It's from 2019 until 2023. I think the level is approximately $500 to $600 million. The royalties are 5 to 15% in the deals. Most deals happen after phase 2. And if I look at the compounds at the bottom, I can say that none of these compounds have the same profile as BST-005. None of them are fungicidal, broad-spectred. They might have a better safety profile, but they will form resistance, and they don't have the broad-spectred. Just to sum up, we have comprehensive antifungal efficacy with BST-005. We are fungicidal, so we minimizes the risk for resistance formation. We have a strategic partnership with Alkem that will finance the upcoming phase 2 and 3 studies in India. And we have a patent protection and market exclusivity lasting until 2043. And we have promising clinical results. We have the first patient treated, and we plan to include another 14 patients and continue our proof of concept study. This here is the management at the top, and then we have the board at the bottom. In Q2, we did some changes in the board, so we have a new board now, primarily Swedish. Then we have the shareholders. We have the 5 biggest shareholders here: Østersjøstiftelsen, Ribsgottet, Rosetta Capital, Tuvedal, and so on. So we have an offer. There's a possibility to partake in warrants of series TO3, and the exercise period is from 18 November to 29th of November 2024. And I think that was my last slide.
All right, Tinja, thank you so much for the presentation. So just a few questions. You mentioned that fungal infections now are recognized as a global health threat by the WHO. This means that it was not before. Are fungal infections happening more often, or is it the resistance that is the core of the problem?
I think it's both. So I think this resistant formation and the use of antifungals as pesticides it's a growing problem. And that's where you began to think about what will happen in the future. And then at the same time, when we had COVID, suddenly you became more attentive to there's actually something called infections. And then you took a deeper dive and began to find out, okay, how many patients is actually affected by invasive fungal infections? How many die? So I think for WHO, who are also dependent on independent research, for them it's kind of an eye-opener that this issue is actually bigger than what they thought it would be. And the same goes for Center for Disease Control, both in Europe and US.
Yes, I noted also from your presentation that besides being very high mortality and morbidity, fungal infections also tend to be very severe. Can you please expand a bit about that?
Yeah, so it's correct. We take it in helicopter view and we talk about how many people die, but there's actually, you change people's lives by, if they have an invasive fungal infection and you know, you saw the little boy, 11-year-old boy who he can't get up to normal lung capacity anymore. He will forever have a little spray he has to remember to take every morning. And and if you talk about Mucor, it's all about having organs removed, having pieces of your face removed or something like that. We don't talk so much about these quality of life altering things, which is actually quite devastating for patients as well. We only talk about mortality, and we should talk more about what does it mean for your quality of life to have an invasive fungal infection.
Mm. And also as an equity analyst, I like talking about numbers. Now regarding the total addressable market, what trends do you see when you look at, for example, fungostatics versus fungicidals? Is there a difference there in how much money is going into the different categories, or can you expand a bit?
So I think for many years the antifungal research has been an area with low investment. I think it has become much better and there's much more awareness, but it's still an underserved area in terms of funding in academia, of making research in invasive fungal infections. I think we're all trying, but it's very difficult to have a fungicidal product, which is what we have, because it's basically only one class of drugs that are fungicidals, and that's the polyenes. Many of the products you saw on the slides with the deals are actually fungistatic, and that again is this thing about multi-drug resistance and the lack of efficacy, and then you have to start again. So more money should go into research on fungicidal drugs in general, I think. Yeah, for sure. And you have a competitor in the US called Matanas Biopharma, for example, that is currently developing a fungicidal drug, but they are struggling a lot with recruiting patients in their study. Is this something that you foresee for yourself in India as well, or can you expand a bit about how India is a good location for conducting this research? I think Biosurgeon made an active decision, and I think it was a very, very good strategic decision that if we're going to be present somewhere, we need a partner, somebody who can lift with us. And if we can get a partner in a country where you have the highest awareness and where you have the highest incidence, then it's super beneficial. And they had the infrastructure to do clinical development. And that means for us that they're out there talking to the sites, pushing the sites, seeing the patients, etc. So I think we have a major advantage, and I don't foresee that we have the same recruitment issues as Martinez have.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood.
And also you have F2G that was mentioned before as one of the deals. And they received a complete response letter, and since then nothing has really come out from that company. What is the status there? Are you aware of anything that's going on?
I, of course, only have access to the public information. So they received a letter from the FDA, complete response, which actually means they were not granted marketing authorization. And the FDA asked for further analysis of the data, and I know further analysis of the data was sent in, but that's a long time ago, and we haven't heard more. And if you talk about F2G, I think you should also be aware F2G So it's a very niche product. It's not broad spectrum. It has also side effects. So I think there are some, it's not the same as BSG 005.
Yeah, you could say BSG is more unique in that way. It's more broad spectrum.
Yeah, we're fungicidal. You take the drug, it's over, it's gone. We expect our side effects to be in the mild to moderate end, not severe and serious. So I still believe we can be first line, and F2G would not be first line because it's more orphan than we are.
And diametrically opposed to only focusing on small geographic area, you have patents across the globe, you could say. And of course in China and Japan, often there is a requirement that studies include patients from those regions. Now you will conduct a lot of your studies in India and will be able to use those patients for approvals in the US and the EU, for example. Will these patients also be able to be used for approvals in Japan and China? Is this something that you're thinking about, looking at potential partners, or is the focus mainly on the EU and the US?
So I think when we come to the proof of concept study, we definitely want to open an IND. And when you open an IND, that also means for many partners become interested. An IND is a US thing, but for the rest of the world, it's a big thing. So I also think that China, Japan, I think partners will come to us, or we will go to them and we'll begin discussing. But yes, we have to, the Indian patients, we have to come up with additional patients in the rest of the world, which could be from China, which could be from Japan, US, Europe, many other countries, Asia. But we need to supplement the studies that we're doing in India.
Yes, and then finally, as a potential investor in Biosurgery, what could you look forward to for the coming months? For example, the ongoing proof of concept study in India. Can we expect any updates before the final readout in Q1?
Yes, our plan is to report on the study on an ongoing basis. It's an open label study. But I also have to be sober, and I have to say the first case is a good case, but many more are to come, and it might not show the same. We will see as we move on, but we will report on the progress of the study, yes.
All right, Tina, thank you so much for the presentation and the answers to my questions.
It was a pleasure to be here.